Forbidden Love, Atlanta. Episode 2. The Morning After the Almost. Chapter 1. 4:47 a.m. Dominique's midtown apartment. Pre-dawn. She hasn't slept. There is a particular quality to a sleepless Atlanta night that has nothing to do with silence. The city never fully quiets. It hums, low and persistent, like a current running beneath the pavement, through the bones of old buildings and new towers alike. A frequency that vibrates somewhere just below the threshold of hearing, but never below the threshold of feeling. Dominique knows this hum. She has lived in this apartment for 3 years, and she has memorized its relationship with the dark. The way the orange glow of streetlights seeps around the edges of the blackout curtains she never bothered to replace. The way the ceiling above her bed holds a faint watermark in its upper left corner that she has stared at on enough sleepless nights to have given it a name she would never admit to. Tonight, that ceiling is receiving her full attention again. 4:47 in the morning. She knows the time without looking because she has been watching the numbers shift on the bedside clock with the focused attention of a woman who has absolutely nothing else she is willing to think about, and the clock is safer than the alternative. The clock does not look back at her. The clock does not have eyes on the color of deep water in low light. The clock does not tilt its head the way he did barely, just barely, when he said her name in that corridor, half a breath and all of a history compressed into 2 syllables. Her champagne flute sits on the nightstand, still half full. She had carried it out of the gala the way you carry something you are not ready to set down, and she had set it there when she got home without drinking the rest, and it has sat there through the whole of this long, ungenerous night like a small, golden piece of evidence. Evidence of what, she cannot precisely say. Evidence of the evening. Evidence that she had been somewhere beautiful and had not been able to fully inhabit it because of him. Because of the way the room had rearranged itself the moment she saw him, not dramatically, not in the way it happens in films with swells of music and slow motion. In real life it was quieter and more devastating than that. The room had simply shifted, reoriented itself around a new center of gravity, and she had spent the next 2 hours pretending it hadn't. The gown hangs over the chair in the corner, midnight blue and still carrying the faint perfume of the evening, amber, jasmine, and the memory of his eyes on her from across the ballroom. When she bought it, the color had felt like the perfect choice, armor and elegance in the same breath. Now, lying in the dark, she is almost certain the fabric holds something else too, the way he looked at her, careful and controlled until one unguarded moment revealed something she knew too well, something she had seen years ago in another version of their lives. What does it mean to lie still in the dark and feel everything moving? Dominique has had 3 years to build stillness around herself, not peace, not exactly, but the architecture of a woman who has decided that stillness is possible and has committed to the project with the same discipline she brings to everything else she has ever decided to be excellent at. 3 years of building. And 30 seconds in a corridor, barely a conversation, barely an exchange, more a collision of proximity and history, and she can feel every careful brick of it trembling. Not falling. Not yet. But it was trembling. Her phone lies face down on the pillow beside her, exactly where she placed it when she got home. She has not touched it since. There is a quiet, stubborn courage in leaving it that way through a sleepless night, in not looking, in choosing not to know. As long as the screen stays dark, she can still pretend nothing has changed. The gala was only a gala, the corridor only a corridor. Those 30 seconds, only 30 seconds, and nothing more. Turning the phone over means finding out. And finding out, she has learned, is always what makes a thing real. But cowardice, like champagne left to go flat, has a shelf life. And at 4:47 in the morning, on a sleepless Atlanta night with the city humming its low, indifferent frequency beneath her window, Dominique reaches for the phone. She turns it over. The screen lights the dark of the room, a small, blue-white rectangle of illumination, and in that light she sees her own face reflected briefly in the black border around the display before the notification appears. One notification. A contact she never deleted, though she had opened the screen to do it more than once, had hovered over the delete option with her thumb, and then closed the app and set the phone down and told herself she would do it later, and later had never quite arrived. A contact she never deleted. And now he has used that persistence, that small and stubborn fact of his continued existence in her phone, to reach her. 2 words on the screen. She reads them. She reads them again. Chapter 2. Marcus at the window again. Marcus's high-rise penthouse, Buckhead. Same pre-dawn hour. He is dressed. He never went to sleep either. Marcus Reid built his life on certainty. It was not a habit or a personality trait, but a method he had developed young and refined over 2 decades of watching what happened to men who let uncertainty choose for them. He had seen his father hesitate, delay, and reconsider until opportunity passed him by so often that indecision became its own kind of loss. Marcus decided early that he would not be that man. He would know. He would choose. He would build projections on reliable data and execute them with the precision of someone who understood that the difference between success and failure often came down to conviction. He has built a great deal on that methodology. The firm. The portfolio. The penthouse in Buckhead with its floor-to-ceiling windows and its Atlanta skyline laid out below him like a reward, luminous, layered. The lights of the city stacked from the highway grid to the mid-rise clusters to the occasional tall tower punching up into the low Georgia sky. He has stood at this window many times. It is a different window from his office, but the same view, and the difference matters more than it should. His office window is professional, aspirational, a backdrop. This window is home. Which means that standing here at 4:47 in the morning, fully dressed, not having gone to sleep, holding a glass of bourbon he has barely touched, this is not a posture of power. This is something else. Tonight, the numbers will not come. After returning from the gala, he sat at his home office desk for an hour, opened the quarterly projections, and stared at the columns until they turned meaningless. That is how he knows how badly the evening has unsettled him. Marcus Reid does not find numbers meaningless. Numbers are the most honest thing he knows. They do not perform, conceal, or say one thing while meaning another. They simply are. He has always trusted them more than he trusts most people. Tonight, they even failed him. So, he is at the window. The Atlanta skyline below him is, as always, indifferent and gorgeous, a city that will look exactly like this tomorrow night and the night after, regardless of what is happening in the interior lives of the men and women who build it, who live in it, who stand at its windows in the hours before dawn wrestling with things that cannot be entered into a spreadsheet. The city has no opinion about Marcus Reid. The city is simply there, glittering as it always is, which tonight he finds more comforting than he expects. He thinks about the moment she walked into the gala. He has been thinking about it, continuously, since it happened, and he is self-aware enough to know that this is a problem and disciplined enough to have attempted to stop and to have failed, which makes it a larger problem. She had come through the entrance with that particular quality of self-possession she had always carried, the quality of a woman who is aware of the room she enters without appearing to be. She held herself the way someone holds themselves when they have done an enormous amount of invisible work and have decided that the work will not be visible. Like a woman who had rebuilt herself from something difficult and did not want anyone to know how difficult the rebuilding had been. He had recognized it immediately because he knew, better than anyone in that ballroom, what the before had looked like. He knew the particular shape of her before the rebuilding. He knew what the work had cost. He had watched her all evening from a careful distance. Careful being the operative word, he had been deliberate about the distance, stationing himself across the ballroom, moving through conversations he was present for in body only, laughing at the right moments, making the right observations, shaking the right hands, all while keeping her in his peripheral vision with the focused attention of a man pretending not to look. He told himself it was only recognition. A natural response to seeing someone from his past in an unexpected place. He told himself it was familiarity, and familiarity was not the same as feeling. He told himself a lot of things that night. None of them were true. He told himself he had moved on. He told himself the years had done their work, putting enough distance between that chapter and this one. He told himself that seeing her again would bring only a mild, manageable warmth, the feeling of something long settled. He told himself the life he had built, the choices he had made, and the man he had become were proof that everything before it was firmly behind him. But a man who has truly moved on does not spend 2 hours tracking someone across a ballroom from the corner of his eye. And a man who has built real distance does not send a message at 4 in the morning from a window he cannot bring himself to leave. So, he sent the message. 2 words, written and deleted and written again before he finally pressed send, something Marcus Reid almost never did. He acted. He decided. Yet here was the smallest, clearest proof of how completely she had always been the exception to everything he thought he knew about himself. Now the phone was in his hand, and he was waiting. Waiting for the kind of answer that might release him or ruin him. And what kept him at that window, with the bourbon untouched and the skyline glowing below, was that he was no longer sure which one he wanted. Chapter 3. Vanessa doesn't miss a thing. A boutique hotel suite in Midtown. Vanessa sits at a marble vanity, removing her jewelry from the gala. The earrings come off first. Always the earrings first. This is Vanessa Caldwell's ritual, performed in the same order at the end of every evening that has required her to be fully assembled, fully presented, fully on. The earrings, then the bracelet, then the necklace, set in a specific arrangement on the velvet tray she travels with because she has learned, over many years of many evenings in many cities, that the small disciplines are what hold everything else together. It is not the grand gestures or the sweeping decisions that define a life. It is the earrings, placed with precision on the velvet tray every time. Vanessa Caldwell did not become who she is by accident. It would be easy to see her as the obstacle, the complication, the woman standing on the wrong side of a love story. But Vanessa is more than that. She built herself the way some people build corporations, with strategy, taste, and an absolute refusal to be underestimated by anyone who made the mistake of doing so. She grew up watching doors close in front of women who were smarter than the men who closed them, and she decided early, without sentimentality, that she would be the kind of woman who brought her own keys. She is formidably intelligent. She is elegant in the way money alone cannot manufacture, because real elegance requires taste, and taste requires attention. Vanessa has always paid attention. To everything. She saw Marcus's eyes follow Dominique across the ballroom. Of course she did. She had seen it happen in real time, that tiny, controlled recalibration in the angle of his body, the way his gaze moved and then was corrected and then moved again. The particular quality of a man's attention when it is going somewhere he has decided it should not go. She had catalogued it the way she catalogues everything, without flinching, without performance, without giving anything in her own expression away. To the person standing beside her at the moment she observed it, she had continued a conversation about commercial real estate trends in the West Midtown corridor without a single missed beat. Vanessa Caldwell does not flinch in public. It is one of her finest qualities and one of her loneliest ones. She has always known, in the way perceptive women always know, not because they are told, not because there is evidence obvious enough to constitute proof, but because they are paying the kind of attention that most people do not pay, that Marcus carries someone with him everywhere he goes. There is a presence in his life that is shaped like an absence. She has felt the outline of it for long enough to have learned its approximate dimensions, to have learned where it lives in him, not in his daily decisions or his professional self or even his tenderness, which is real and which she does not doubt. It lives somewhere older than all of that. Somewhere he does not talk about and she has been careful not to ask about, because there are questions, Vanessa knows, that once asked cannot be unasked, and some answers rearrange things that she has needed to stay arranged. Tonight, she finally put a face to the ghost. She sets down the earrings. They rest on the velvet tray with a small, precise sound, the click of something being placed in its designated location. She looks at herself in the mirror then. Really looks. Not the performance of looking, not the assessment of eyeliner and the adjustment of expression, but the actual act of seeing herself, a woman of 41 who is, by nearly any available measure, extraordinary. Sitting alone at a marble vanity in a hotel suite in the hours before dawn, having spent an evening watching the man she is building a future with look at another woman the way he has never quite looked at her. What Vanessa is thinking in this moment is not rage. It is not hurt, or not exactly. Hurt is something you feel when you are surprised, and Vanessa has not been truly surprised in a very long time. What she is feeling is something cooler than either of those things, and more dangerous, because it has already been processed by the formidable machinery of her intelligence and converted from emotion into decision. She has felt it for the length of the drive back from the gala, and the elevator ride up, and the opening of the suite door, and the removal of the earrings, and by the time she looks at herself in the mirror, the feeling has become a plan. She picks up her phone. She scrolls to a number she knows well enough not to have to search for. She presses call, and the line connects on the second ring, which tells her that the person on the other end was awake, which tells her that she and this person have more in common tonight than either of them has yet articulated. When the line connects, Vanessa does not say hello. She does not preamble. She simply says, in a voice that is perfectly level, perfectly warm, and entirely without warmth of the ordinary kind, "We need to talk about Dominique." Who answers the call remains unclear for now. What matters is that the call is made, the night shifts on its axis, and somewhere across the sleeping city, a new piece begins to move. Chapter 4. The text. Back to Dominique. She is now sitting on the edge of her bed, phone in her hands, the 2 words on screen. The message reads, "I'm sorry." 2 words. 8 letters, 1 apostrophe, 1 period, the period being its own kind of statement, the period being the thing that distinguishes an apology from an opening. Though Dominique is not yet certain whether this one is meant as the former or the latter, or whether Marcus Reid, at whatever hour he typed this, knew the difference himself. She reads it a 3rd time. A 4th. The phone screen casts its small blue light across her face in the dark of the bedroom, and she sits on the edge of the bed with her feet on the floor and the message in her hands and tries to locate within herself the appropriate response to something she has waited 2 years to receive and is now, having received it, at a complete loss to process. Here is the thing about an apology from someone who does not apologize: it lands differently from all others. This is not a metaphor. It is a physiological fact. You can feel it differently, feel the weight of it differently, the way you would feel the weight of a door swinging open on hinges that have been still for a very long time. There is resistance in it, and then release, and then the disorienting rush of the air from the other side, and you have to stand in that air and determine what it means that you are standing in it. Marcus Reid is not a man who apologizes. It is not a cruelty in him. It is a structural truth, a feature of the architecture of who he is, the same architecture that built his discipline and his precision and his capacity to be extraordinary at nearly everything he undertakes. He does not apologize because he does not make mistakes he has not already corrected internally, processed and filed and moved beyond before anyone else has noticed. To apologize is to acknowledge a debt. Marcus Reid does not carry debt. Except, apparently, this one. The word sorry from him feels, Dominique thinks, sitting on the edge of her bed in the blue-white light of his message, like relief and like a detonation at the same time. Like pressing on a bruise to confirm it is still there. She has imagined this message. She will admit this to no one, not even Celeste, but she has imagined this message, in the way you imagine things you have decided you do not want, because wanting things you have decided not to want is one of the more persistent cruelties of being human. In her imagination, it was always followed by something larger. An explanation. A reckoning. A reason, the specific, articulable reason for the specific, irreversible thing that happened. Something she could hold in her hands and examine and say, yes, this is the shape of it. This is where it broke. This is the name of the fault line. In her imagination, the apology came with context, with the answer to the question she had been carrying. But here it sits. Small. Quiet. 2 words on a screen at 4:47 in the morning. No explanation attached. No reckoning. Just the apology, dropped into the silence like a stone into still water, and now she is watching the rings expand outward, and she cannot stop watching, and she is not sure she wants to. She types something. Deletes it. Types again, a full sentence, careful and measured, the kind that says she received the message, noted it, and will respond at a more reasonable hour. Deletes that too. Then something shorter. Gone again. Her thumbs move across the keyboard and pull back, move and pull back, as if she is standing at the edge of something and choosing over and over not to jump. There is dignity in that choice. There is also exhaustion. A person can only stand at the edge for so long before the choosing starts to feel like its own kind of fall. She types 3 words. She looks at them for a long moment. The cursor blinks. Atlanta hums below the window. The champagne glass sits on the nightstand. The gown carries its perfume from the chair in the corner. And then Dominique presses send. The message delivers. 3 words. Why now, Marcus? No question mark. A statement dressed like a question. The difference is not accidental. A question mark would have given him permission. A question mark would have opened a door. A statement made to look like a question says, I am demanding an answer, not inviting a conversation. It is the language of a woman with her arms crossed, still in the room, but making it clear that entry will cost something. It is, in other words, exactly what Dominique would say. Chapter 5. What daylight does. Morning arrives over Atlanta. Sunrise over the Beltline. The city waking up. Dawn comes into Atlanta from the east like a slow, confident announcement. First, just the suggestion of it. A softening of the darkness at the edge of the sky, a deep blue warming toward violet, warming toward the particular coral amber that belongs specifically to this city in the first minutes of a June morning. When the humidity already has an opinion and the light has that thick, honeyed quality that photographers come to Georgia for and residents take entirely for granted. Then the sun itself, dragging its full gold weight over the Piedmont Park tree line, pouring itself across the Beltline Trail where the first joggers are already there, always the first joggers. Those resolute and slightly alarming people who have been awake since before the sun and who are now the city's earliest witnesses to a morning that the rest of Atlanta is not yet awake enough to see. The coffee shops are opening their doors. The espresso machines are cycling up, releasing their particular perfume into the morning air. The delivery trucks are making their earliest rounds. On the Beltline, a woman walks her dog past the art installations, past the mural walls still vivid in the new light, past the benches where later today people will sit and eat and watch the city pass by. Atlanta, for all its ambition and speed, still has that southern need to see and be seen. There is warmth in it. There is also a little deception, because Atlanta in the morning looks like a city that slept well and has no regrets. But this is a city full of sleepless people. Always has been. Dominique is in the shower. She made the decision at some point after 5 a.m. that sleep was a ship that had sailed without her, and that if she was going to face what the day was going to require of her, and she knew already. She knew with the cellular certainty of someone who has been awake all night thinking about a person and has now, unambiguously, re-engaged with that person, then she needed to stand under hot water until she felt like herself again. Until the armor came back on. She turned the temperature up past comfortable, which is something she does when she needs the physical sensation to override the interior one, and she stood there for a long time. She let herself cry. Just briefly. Just enough. The kind of crying that is not grief and not despair, but is instead the body's pressure valve releasing something that has been building for longer than the night, longer, if she is honest, than the gala, longer even than the 2 years since things ended. Something that was building from the moment she decided to rebuild herself around the fact of his absence, which turned out to be the same moment she was building around the fact of his continued presence in the rooms of herself she never quite renovated. She let herself cry for exactly the amount of time that felt honest, and then she was done with it. She turned the water hotter, tilted her face into it, and was done. She has a 9 o'clock meeting. She has a presentation. She has a client who is flying in from Charlotte and a conference room that she booked 2 weeks ago and a set of slides she built herself and knows by heart. She has a life, a whole, full, functional, genuinely good life, and that life does not have Marcus Reid written into its structure anywhere, and she has made her peace with that. She has built her peace with that, stone by stone, habit by habit, morning by morning. She is at peace. She is fine. She is moving forward. For a moment, she lets herself believe every word of it. The phone rings. Not a notification this time, not the soft chime of a message arriving, but a call. Full, insistent, the name lit up bright on the screen beside the bathroom mirror where she has propped it, still in her towel, reaching for moisturizer. She sees the name and she stares at it, and the bathroom fills up with the sound of it ringing, and she counts without meaning to count. 1 ring. 2. 3. 4. She stands there in the steam of the shower and the gold light coming through the small, frosted window, and she counts the rings with the focused attention of someone who is having a very important argument with herself. She answers on the 5th. Chapter 6. His voice. Dominique, still in her apartment. Marcus in his car driving, though he has nowhere specific to go. Loving someone, losing them, and then spending years building a life where they no longer belong can teach a person how to forget. A face can blur until its sharpest details soften the line of a jaw, the angle of a smile, the way someone's eyes catch the light. A laugh can be reassigned in memory to someone safer, someone whose laughter does not cost anything to remember. With enough time, enough discipline, and enough careful redirection, it can even become possible to believe that what once felt so enormous was smaller than it was. That it was youth. That it was timing. That it was openness before armor. That was all. But a voice is harder to quarantine. A voice lives somewhere older than memory. It settles below decision and discipline, somewhere in the body instead of the mind, in the place where things remain even after the mind has declared them finished. She had heard his voice in the corridor at the gala, heard him say her name, just her name, and it moved through her the way music does when a forgotten song returns and suddenly reminds you how much you once loved it. Not sweetly. Not at first. First came the ache of recognition, that breathless moment before tenderness. Oh, there you are. She had been carrying that feeling for 16 hours. And now his voice is in her ear again, and she is standing in her bathroom in her towel in the steam, and he says her name, just her name, first, the way he has always said it, with that particular weight in the first syllable. The weight of someone who knows the name means something, and she says nothing. She does not trust what she will say if she begins. She has to hear what he's going to do with the silence first. He tells her he has been sitting with something he needs to say in person. Not in a text, the word text delivered with a tone of gentle self-deprecation that tells her he already knows the message was insufficient. Already knows that I'm sorry as a text at 4 a.m. is not the beginning and not the end of anything, but is simply the thing he could not stop himself from sending. Not in a corridor at a gala, he says, surrounded by Atlanta's finest, and here she can hear something in his voice that might be dry humor, but might be something more pained than that, pretending not to watch them. She tells him she has a meeting. The words are composed and ordinary and give away nothing, and she is proud of herself for the fraction of a second before she realizes that he has known her long enough to hear exactly what is underneath composed and ordinary. He says he knows about the meeting. He says afterward. The word is simple. It is also, Dominique recognizes, a statement of intent from a man who has spent 2 years not making the statement. It lands on her with the full weight of everything that preceded it. She tells him she'll think about it. She keeps her voice level and moderate, the voice she uses in boardrooms, the voice that gives away nothing and invites reasonable follow-up. He says okay. And then there is a pause, the pause of someone about to say something and then reconsidering, and then the call ends, and she is standing in her bathroom holding the phone, steam curling around her, the Atlanta morning pressing gold light through the frosted glass. She already knows she will say yes. In the privacy of that bathroom, with steam curling around her and no one there to witness it, Dominique knows as clearly as she knows anything. She had known since 4:47 that morning. Maybe since she answered on the 5th ring instead of letting the call go to voicemail, which would have been wiser and well within her power. Maybe even longer than that. She knows the way people know the truths they have tried not to face, completely and with quiet fury at how complete that knowing is. Chapter 7. The friend who knows everything. A cafe on the Beltline. Dominique meets her best friend, Celeste, before the meeting. Celeste Okafor arrived at the cafe before Dominique did. She always arrives first, which is a function of her particular variety of love. Celeste loves people by showing up early, by being already there and already ordered and already knowing what you need before you've found a way to say it. She had a courte-do waiting for herself and a large oat latte with 1 sugar waiting across from her, and she was watching the door with the expression of a woman who has seen the Instagram story and has processed it and has formulated a position and is ready, with warmth and without mercy, to share it. Celeste is 34, loud in all the ways Dominique is composed. She laughs from somewhere full and unreserved. She expresses her opinions immediately and completely. She has a quality of emotional transparency that some people find unnerving and that Dominique, who is its opposite in almost every way, has relied on for a decade as the thing that balances her out. Celeste is open-hearted where Dominique is armored, and she has armored herself in her own ways, but her armor is the kind that is visible, which makes it a different kind entirely. She is the kind of friend who will look you directly in the face and tell you the thing you already know but have been avoiding, and she will do it while refilling your coffee so that the act of being told is inseparable from the act of being cared for. She saw the gala on someone's Instagram story. She will not say whose, because Celeste has a code about sources, but it was posted at roughly 11:45 p.m. from an account with good lighting and a tendency to document the social geography of Atlanta's finest evenings. And in the background of one particular shot, there was Dominique in midnight blue, and there in the corridor behind her was a man that Celeste recognized with the immediate and unhappy clarity of someone who has heard every chapter of a long story. The particular geometry of their bodies, close enough to speak privately, far enough to be technically appropriate, the specific posture of 2 people who have a history they are trying not to occupy. She had seen all of this in a background, in a party photo on social media, and had sent 3 texts that received no reply, which told her everything she needed to know about the state of Dominique's evening. Dominique slides into the chair across from her. She looks composed, which Celeste has long ago learned to read as data rather than information. She wraps both hands around the oat latte, her hands, Celeste notes, which is where Dominique's composure always has its edges, and she takes a sip and she looks across the table with an expression that is calibrated to communicate that everything is perfectly fine. "Tell me," Celeste says, leaning forward with her courte-do, "that you didn't talk to him." Dominique wraps both hands more firmly around the mug. She does not say anything. She looks into the middle distance for a moment in the particular way of a woman who is reviewing her options and finding them fewer than she'd prefer. Celeste reads this silence. She reads it with the fluency of 10 years of friendship, the fluency of someone who has memorized the entire dictionary of what Dominique's silences mean, and what this particular silence means is, "I did more than talk to him." Dominique. Celeste says her name with a specific and loving kind of weight. More silence. Dominique rearranges her hands on the mug. "He called you this morning, didn't he?" It is not a question. It does not need to be. Outside the cafe window, the beltline moves past in its morning rhythms, joggers, cyclists, a pair of women with strollers, 2 young men in construction vests heading toward a worksite. The whole ordinary magnificent machinery of a city that does not pause for anyone's interior crisis. Dominique watches it for a moment. Then she looks back at Celeste. "Don't," Dominique says. One word. Not defensive, preemptive. "I haven't said anything yet," Celeste replies and takes a sip of her courte-do and does not look away. At this table, in this cafe, on this Atlanta morning, friendship becomes something simple and steady, one woman watching another stand at the edge, without pulling her back or pushing her forward. Celeste knows the choice is Dominique's to make. All she can do is make sure her friend sees the edge clearly, where the drop begins, what waits below, and that she is not standing there alone. Chapter 8. The meeting she barely survived. A glass-walled conference room, Dominique's firm in Midtown. The conference room on the 14th floor has a glass wall that looks out over Midtown, and on clear June mornings, like this one, the light comes through it at a particular angle that makes the whole room feel like a kind of statement. Dominique had chosen this room deliberately, as she chooses everything deliberately, because she understands the language of space, that a glass-walled room with a view says something about the company you are, about the confidence you carry, about the quality of what you are about to offer. She had booked it 2 weeks ago. She had prepared the slides herself. She knows every number, every projection, every design decision behind every data point in the presentation that is now loading on the screen at the far end of the table. And she is sitting at the head of that table in a charcoal blazer and a composure so complete it might as well be structural. The client from Charlotte sits across from her with 2 of his colleagues, and they are looking at the screen with the polite, appraising attention of men who have sat in many conference rooms and received many presentations and are waiting to determine whether this one will be worth the flight. Dominique begins to speak. Then something extraordinary happens, or maybe something ordinary for a woman like Dominique, which makes it extraordinary in its own way. She becomes exactly who the room needs her to be. The words come. The numbers flow. The transitions land on time. The design rationale is clear, confident, and precise. Her answers to the first questions show the depth of her preparation and make one thing immediately obvious. This firm has not put its second best forward. Inside, she is in the conference room, in her bathroom in the morning steam, in the cafe with Celeste, in the corridor at the gala, and at her kitchen table at 4:47 in the morning with a phone screen lighting the dark. Inside, she is having 4 conversations at once, living in 4 moments at once, and managing the weather of all of them with the focus of a woman who has never once let anyone see her sweat. It is a performance, but it is also real, the way the best performances always are. The ability to close the deal while your inner world is in flames is extraordinary. It is also the kind of strength that can quietly take more from you than you ever stop to count. She delivers the presentation without a single falter. The room empties slowly after handshakes, pleasantries, the warm, careful language of a meeting that has gone well, and that all parties know has gone well, and that no one will say out loud has gone well until the contracts are signed. Because this is the other language that conference rooms speak, and Dominique is fluent in it. And then the last handshake, the last professionally warm goodbye, and then the door closes, and the room is empty. She sits alone at the long table. The Atlanta skyline fills the glass wall behind her. She exhales, just once, fully, the exhale of a woman who has been holding something together for a long time and has just been given permission to set it down for a moment. She picks up her phone. His name is still on the screen from the morning call, still sitting there in the recent calls list like a small and patient fact. She opens a message window, types an address, a restaurant she knows in the Old Fourth Ward, the kind of place that understands that sometimes you need a table in the back and lighting that does not ask too much of you. 6:30, she types. She sends it before she can talk to herself about it. Which is to say, she sends it at the exact moment her discipline and her honesty arrive at the same conclusion simultaneously, which happens rarely enough that when it does, she has learned to honor it. Chapter 9. Marcus prepares. Marcus in his penthouse afternoon light. He is choosing what to wear. The closet is organized, as everything in Marcus Reid's life is organized, with a precision that is neither ostentatious nor accidental. Dark suits on one end, arranged by weight of fabric for seasonal utility. Shirts by color, pale to dark, each one pressed, not by a housekeeper, though he has one, but by Marcus himself on the evenings when his hands need something honest to do. Shoes on a low shelf maintained. It is not a vain man's closet. It is a precise man's closet, which is a different thing, and the distinction matters. Vanity is about appearance, precision is about intention, and Marcus has always been a man of intentions. He is standing in front of this closet in the afternoon light of a June day that has warmed the penthouse to the edge of comfortable, and he is taking longer than he has taken to choose clothes for any event in recent memory. Longer than the gala. Longer, possibly, than anything in the last several years. He takes out the charcoal suit, his first instinct, and holds it at arm's length for a moment before returning it to its position. Too formal. It says, "This is a meeting." He considers a jacket without a tie a more casual construction. Tries it against his reflection. too studied in its casualness. It says, "I am trying to appear as though I did not think about this." He sets it aside. Marcus knows exactly what he is doing. He knows every discarded choice is a discarded lie about how seriously he is taking this evening, and still he keeps going. Self-awareness has not given him the power to stop. He is a man who understands most of his own architecture well enough to name its limits, but not always well enough to dismantle them. In that, he is deeply human. What he finally settles on is simpler than either option: dark trousers, a soft-colored shirt in a deep navy that has always suited the way he carries himself, and a jacket that is present without feeling like armor. Not armor. Not its absence. Something in between, which is exactly where he is tonight, between the man who never came back and the man he wants to be when he sits across from her and says what he has carried for 2 years. He looks at himself in the mirror. He looks like a man trying very hard not to look like he is trying. He does not quite succeed. His phone buzzes on the dresser. He picks it up. A message from Vanessa, a check-in, pleasantly worded, warm on the surface and layered beneath, the kind that arrives when someone is paying close attention and wants you to know it without saying so directly. She asks how his afternoon is. She mentions a dinner next week that she would like him to attend. She closes with something affectionate. Marcus reads it twice. He composes a reply, brief, warm, genuine in its warmth, careful in its brevity. He is not a dishonest man. He has made real commitments, and he takes those commitments seriously. He is not trying to betray them. He is trying to understand what is true before more damage is done by refusing to look at it. He has not yet figured out how to be honest about this, how to hold what tonight might mean in one hand and what his current life requires in the other, and look at both clearly, in the full light of day, without flinching. That reckoning is coming. It is, in fact, about 3 hours away, at a table in the old 4th Ward with low lighting, a back corner, and 2 people who have been circling the truth for 2 years and are about to find out whether they have the courage to stand in it. Chapter 10. The restaurant. A quietly elegant restaurant in the old 4th Ward. Low light. A table for 2 near the back, away from the windows. The restaurant understands the way certain places in certain cities understand it, not as secrecy, not as complicity, but as a quality of atmosphere that permits the full range of human conversation to occur without the sensation of being observed. The lighting is the primary instrument, warm, low, directionless in that specific way that makes everyone in a room look like the best version of themselves, like a version of themselves they might aspire to on a good day. The music lives just below the level of conversation. Tonight it is something jazz-adjacent, soft piano and a brushed snare, the kind of music that takes up exactly enough space to cover silence without filling it, which is a kindness to people who need silence to be coverable. The tablecloths are white. The tables are well-spaced. The table in the back corner, away from the front windows where the old 4th Ward evening moves past in the gold-washed way of Atlanta in early June, is the table that says everything about the person who chose it. Dominique arrives first. Of course she does, she arrives first to everything, because arriving first is a way of establishing the terms. You choose the seat that faces the door. You order water. You sit with your hands around the glass, and you look at the menu for a moment, and then set it down, because you are not going to be able to read it anyway, and you collect yourself, and you arrange your face into something that is open without being open. And you wait. She is wearing something simple tonight, the deliberate choice of a woman who has already worn one statement in the last 24 hours, and has decided that tonight requires the opposite. Something that says, "I am here, I am present, but I did not dress for you." Marcus arrives exactly on time. Not early. Not late. Exactly on the minute she specified, which from a man like Marcus is its own kind of statement. It says, "I am not so desperate that I arrived early and sat waiting. I am not so casual that I am late. I am exactly where I said I would be, at exactly the time agreed upon, which is the only thing I know how to offer you tonight that I am certain of." He crosses the room to the table. She watches him come. He sees her watching him. They sit. The menus are placed before them by a server who reads the table with professional accuracy and does not linger. Water is poured. They both reach for their glasses at the same moment, notice it, and say nothing. There is a strange, specific awkwardness here. Two people who know each other deeply, maybe too deeply, sitting across a white tablecloth and performing the polite first steps of strangers. They comment on the menu. They agree on an appetizer they will not remember ordering. He notes that the restaurant is quieter than he expected for a Wednesday. She says she comes here sometimes for client dinners. It is always like this. They are perfectly pleasant and perfectly careful, and the space between those two things crackles with everything they are not saying. The music plays beneath it all. Evening moves past the front windows. Atlanta does not care at all. They order. The server disappears. The bread arrives, neither of them touches it. Their water glasses are still half full from the most recent pour. The quiet between them has become something textured, something with weight and temperature, something that requires acknowledgement or it will fill the entire room. Marcus picks up his fork. He sets it back down. He looks at her, not at the table, not at the menu, not at the middle distance that men look at when they are composing themselves. He looks directly at her, the way he was unable to allow himself to look at her across the ballroom the night before, and he says the thing. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to my channel Gold Thread Studios for more. I let you go, Marcus says, and his voice is quiet and even, the voice of a man who has rehearsed this and found that the rehearsal has not made it easier, because I thought I was protecting you. He does not look away from her. He continues, I know now that I was only protecting myself. Chapter 11. What she does with that. Same table. The moment after his confession. His words sit in the air between them. No one rushes this moment. It would be easy to fill the silence with reaction, to describe her face immediately, to move the scene forward because silence can feel too heavy to hold. But this silence matters. What happens right after a true thing is said is often more important than the saying itself. In that pause between words and response, something decides whether it will open or close. Some door moves, even if only a fraction. And this moment needs room to breathe. The candlelight is steady. The jazz plays its soft, unhurried measure. Through the windows at the front of the restaurant, Atlanta moves in its evening mode, headlights and foot traffic and the particular orange gold of the sky at the late end of a June day, the hour when the heat finally begins to release its grip and the city breathes out. She is not looking at the window. She is looking at him, or rather she is looking at the tablecloth just in front of him, which is close enough to looking at him that requires the same courage. What happens in Dominique's body in the moment after his words is not what she would have predicted, had she ever allowed herself to predict it. It's not tears, she has already had her tears, quietly, in the shower, and that account is settled for today. It is not anger, though anger has been one of the primary architects of her distance from this moment for 2 years. What she feels is something more complex and less named than either of those things, the particular ache of being handed the truth you always knew but did not know you needed to hear said aloud. There is a difference she is discovering in real time between knowing something and receiving it. She knew. She knew. She had known from the night it happened, from the very moment when he made the decision he has just described, that fear was at the center of it, not indifference, not a deficiency of feeling, but the specific terror of a man who loves something and does not trust himself with it. She knew. But she had needed him to say so. She had needed the acknowledgement to exist outside the privacy of her own understanding, to exist in the air between them, spoken, real, witnessed. She is quiet for a long time. Longer than comfortable. Longer than either of them would choose. The water is refreshed by the server, who moves with the precise ghostlight efficiency of someone trained to be invisible, and neither Dominique nor Marcus notices, not the server, not the water. Not anything outside the radius of this table and what is happening on it. Then, carefully, the way she says everything that matters, as though she is measuring it word by word against some interior standard only she can read, she speaks. The problem, Marcus, she says, is that I built my whole life around you being gone. He hears this. He goes very still. The words enter him and move through him without sparking defensiveness. There is no reflex to argue, correct, or reframe. He receives them as something he earned, and he understands what they cost the person who said them. He looks at her. He says nothing. There is nothing he could say that would not make her words smaller, and Marcus Reid, for all his failures, has always understood the value of what Dominique offers when she opens. They sit in the truth of it for a while. It is not a comfortable sitting, it is the kind of sitting that requires something of you, that asks you to stay present inside something difficult rather than finding a door. But they stay. The candle burns. The music plays. The waiter refreshes the water glasses, and still neither of them notices, because they are somewhere more important than this restaurant, somewhere inside the territory of two people who have finally stopped pretending that the territory does not exist. Beyond the window, Atlanta presses itself against the glass, luminous and enormous, the skyline stacked in layers of light. The city has held every version of their story without ever being asked whether it wanted to. Some cities break you open and leave you there. Some give you the raw material to rebuild. And some cities get into your blood so deeply that you cannot separate who you are from who you became inside them. Atlanta has that particular and brutal gift. It makes everything louder, every joy, every grief, every longing, every loss, every moment of standing at an edge before dawn with a phone in your hand and a message on the screen from someone you never quite stopped being changed by. There is nowhere to hide in a city like this. The sound does not go down. The feeling does not soften. That is the real forbidden love of the story. Not only the man across the table, with his 2 words and his rehearsed honesty and his window in the pre-dawn hours. Not only the history, the corridor at the gala, the text, the call, or this table with its white cloth and half-touched water glasses. The real forbidden love is the feeling itself. The one that stayed with her through every chapter of the last 2 years. The one that survived the rebuilding. The one that sat in the chair beneath the midnight blue gown all night, followed her into the shower and the cafe and the conference room, and is here now at this table, patient and ancient and completely uninterested in the plans she made around it. The feeling she never quite got away from. The one she was never fully trying to. End of episode 2. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to my channel Gold Thread Studios for more.